Now, it's no secret that the Detroit Pistons are coming off a very magical season when we consider them having one of the worst seasons in all of sports history last year to the very following next season. The Detroit Pistons have the best bounce back season in NBA history, becoming the first team ever to triple their win total from their previous season, going from 14 wins to 44 wins. And all in all, while doing this, the Detroit Pistons, in my opinion, I thought they were a very entertaining basketball team. Very fun to watch. I think Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham was the #1 alley-oop connection in all of the NBA. And then also we look at their first round playoff series. I know it resulted in a loss, but we look at a handful of plays in this game that could have went differently, or the Detroit Pistons executed on. They could have went to the second round of the NBA playoffs. So like I said, all in all, a very magical season for the Detroit Pistons. And when this happens, when we look at the situation that the Detroit Pistons are in, being so bad for a very long time, not winning a playoff game since the year 2008, back when I was in elementary school. When you finally break out of that rebuilding phase, it's like a lot of people, they start having a bunch of crazy opinions and they want to switch things around. They're not satisfied from going bad to becoming good and getting to the playoffs. It's not enough for some people. Some people are like, okay, we just got to the playoffs, now it's time to win an NBA championship. And what I'm referring to is that, I've heard a couple of different opinions from people with platforms saying that the Detroit Pistons need to go out and make a very big splash, need to go out and get somebody like Devin Booker, or go out and get somebody like Giannis Antetokounmpo. When me personally, I think it's way too soon to make any type of big jump like that, any type of big splash to where you have to break up this core, because we've barely seen what these guys can do. This is just some surface level stuff that we just seen this previous season. So I never know why people they see a team that was struggling for a very long time, they had one promising season, now every move going forward needs to be a championship move. No, man, when we watched Dragon Ball Z, we didn't see Goku just start off as Super Saiyan 3. We had to see him work from the beginning, you feel me? His normal form, and then getting Kaioken, and then becoming Super Saiyan, and then on and on. That's what we need to see with the Detroit Pistons. We need to see them win their first playoff series. We need to see them get to the conference finals. We need to see them send multiple guys into the All-Star game. And then once that happens, once we start failing consecutively, once we start losing consecutively in the first round, or we can't get over a certain hump in the playoffs, that's when you make some drastic moves. And it sounds like the owner of the team, he's on the exact same page, because he was being interviewed and he was being asked some questions, and Cade Cunningham came up. And when he was being asked about Cade Cunningham, I'm paraphrasing here, he said that Cade Cunningham, he's focused on Cade Cunningham becoming an MVP next season. He wants to keep developing Cade Cunningham, because he said this team really goes off his play, and it goes off his energy, and it goes off of his character. And I couldn't agree more. And I was so happy when the Detroit Pistons, when they went out and they got Cade Cunningham with the #1 overall pick. And I know it's going to sound like I'm being a dead horse when I say this, but so many times where I said if the Detroit Pistons get Cade Cunningham, and of course he had to be healthy as well, because Cade Cunningham, he had struggled with health aside from this season, his first couple of years in the league, he had struggled with staying on the basketball court. But we said if Cade Cunningham can stay healthy for a majority of the season for the Detroit Pistons, and they get just a little bit of offensive weaponry around him, respectable offensive weaponry, guys that can knock down open shots and score the basketball for themselves, I promise you, numerous times I said Cade Cunningham, not only will he make the All-Star team, but he's probably going to be an All-NBA player. And that's what we saw happen this season with the addition of Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, and Tobias Harris. We saw a drastic leap from Cade Cunningham. And when we saw that leap from Cade Cunningham, we saw the Detroit Pistons become a great basketball team again. And I do call them a great basketball team, especially if we can just consider it from the month of January to the end of the season. #1 in defensive rating, and record-wise one of the best teams in the NBA. They were playing elite ball, but that just goes back to what the owner said. He saw that once he picked just a little bit of talent, and no disrespect to Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, but these are not NBA players that other teams around the NBA were just clamoring or knocking down the door or calling these guys cell phones trying to get. So the owner is seeing with the bottom not to say the bottom, but not elite NBA talent. What Cade Cunningham and his young core was able to do, he knows the right thing to go forward is to continuing to develop these guys. And the Detroit Pistons, they just have a great superstar to build around. When we look at Cade Cunningham, we take away the basketball abilities. We gotta love the leader that he is, the stuff that he says in his interviews, how he's not afraid to say what his teammates. He's not afraid to say when his teammates are playing well, but he's also not afraid to say what they need to do better as a team, including himself and the way that he carries himself, the way that he presents himself. I remember in the middle of the season, he was playing really well. It was when he started to get some notoriety, and he got himself a TNT interview. And I love that he went to the interview with a suit and a tie on, letting everybody know that he means business. So the stuff like that off the court, you pay attention to those little things. Cade Cunningham, he has superstar written all over him. And then we look at Cade Cunningham on the basketball court. There's nothing that you cannot love. We start off with the size of Cade Cunningham, 6'6", 6'7", and he's a lean 230 pounds. And this is some muscle that he's having to work really hard for, because he's a vegan, so he's not getting that protein from chicken and steak and shrimp. He's finding all these unorthodox ways to add protein onto his body. So he's a health nut. And then he's 6'7", 220 pounds. And then offensively, he's one of the greatest weapons in the NBA, in my personal opinion, because there's no weakness in his offensive game. He can score from all three levels. He can knock down the three-point shot. His mid-range game is money, and I think the best part of his offensive scoring game is all of the different ways he can score around the rim, in the post, getting to a hook shot, shooting the post fade, making post moves on guys, post spinning off of guys, drop stepping smaller guards. He has a legit post game, and then getting downhill as a finisher, can finish with the left, finish with the right, and he's always looking to embrace the contact and finish through it. He's a very, very tough finisher. And then what makes all of this so crazy on the offensive side of the ball is that Cade Cunningham, he has a computer brain when it comes to the game of basketball. He processes the game. He processes the game so quickly, and he gets so many open looks to his teammates and the guys around him. And he's an exceptional passer, whether it's a bounce pass, a lob pass, an outlet pass, a terrific playmaker. So all of these things being said, Cade Cunningham, he's a crazy offensive weapon. And we look at his numbers from this season. He averaged 26 points per game to go along with 9 assists and 6 boards. At the age of 23, the only other player in NBA history to have that type of stat line at the end of a season is Oscar Robertson. So a very historical season for a bunch of different reasons for Cade Cunningham, and that's why I'm with the Detroit Pistons, focusing on Cade Cunningham, continuing to build him up. And I love that MVP goal for next season. So we look at what the Detroit Pistons can do this offseason to improve the roster and improve the chances of Cade Cunningham elevating the team once again and getting to that MVP award. There's quite a few things they can do. And I think the first thing that needs to happen for the Detroit Pistons is for everyone to get healthy. And it's not like the Detroit Pistons were a super beat up team or had a bunch of injured players going into the playoffs, but they did have injuries to two key guys that were intricate parts of their rotation. And Jaden Ivey, he was a player that was going for a significant amount of time with a broken leg, and it wasn't something that he could control, a very, very freak accident. But Jaden Ivey was playing the best basketball of his NBA career before he went down with this injury. And the one thing that really gets me about that is that Jaden Ivey was progressing rapidly, over a multitude of weeks. He was progressing rapidly. So I would have loved to see how he would have finished that season and how far he would have gotten, because it was something that was happening within the whole Detroit Pistons. Their team, their young guys, was getting better and better each and every game. But there was no Jaden Ivey for the first round of the playoffs. And neither was there any Isaiah Stewart. There was no Isaiah Stewart after game 1 against the New York Knicks, and that was that was a player that we definitely could have needed out there on the basketball court, because Isaiah Stewart, I know he has this reputation of being some, tough bad guy that just want to start fights all the time. But Isaiah Stewart is statistically one of the best rim protectors in all of the NBA, and he's just a high energy guy. So you love to have him out on the playoffs. So I think that's number one. Get Jaden Ivey healthy, get Isaiah Stewart healthy, and keep that young core together of Jalen Duren, Asari Thompson, Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, Ron Holland. Get these guys healthy. Let them get another training camp together to develop and continue to build that chemistry. And then we look past that, getting everyone healthy. Now, just because we said the Detroit Pistons don't need to go out and get a Giannis or go out and get a guy like Devin Booker, that doesn't mean that they should stay put this offseason. Now, what I like about the Detroit Pistons is that they have a lot of great assets. They have cap space to go out and complete trades. They have, I believe they have control over their first round draft picks for over the next 7 years, and their second round draft picks for like over the next 15 years. And then they have $14 million in cap space. So we're probably not going to get too deep into that today, but we look at some people that they could target in the offseason. I want to look at a player like Jabari Smith Jr., and I'm sorry to all my Rocket guys out there. We do got our eyes on Jabari Smith Jr., but I think he would make such a perfect fit on the Detroit Pistons, in the Detroit Pistons front court, alongside Cade Cunningham, alongside Jaden Ivey, being a guy that can knock down that corner shot at a very high level, can also put the ball on the floor, get to that one dribble pull up. He's 6'10", so he's naturally gonna be a decent finisher, at least around the rim, and then he brings so much defensive versatility on the defensive side of the ball. We can also look at a player like Naz Reid, who's gonna be a free agent next year for the Minnesota Timberwolves. We make the right trade. We make the right trades to free up some more cap space, because he is a sixth man of the year. I imagine he's gonna be looking for a pretty big contract, but I would love to have him on the Detroit Pistons, because like I said, he's more of a modern big, and I think he would fit so good alongside Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. Naz Reid can play the 5, he can play the 4, he can rebound, he can shoot, he can attack closeouts, and he's not a guy that's going to come in and really mess up the synergy that the Detroit Pistons are building right now. So those are just a couple of players that I'm eyeing right now. But like I said, this offseason is going to be very, very interesting. But I love the direction that the Detroit Pistons are hinting that they're going to go in, and that's continuing to build around this young core. But that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below. Where do you think the Detroit Pistons are going in the future? And then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man. And that's curtains.